All right, guys. First off, as always, good day. I'm glad you're here. So, this lesson today, we're going to talk about the fall of Rome. We're going to look at how basically this great and mighty empire basically went away. Okay, so that is what today's lesson is about. So, let's go ahead and get started with the warm up. All right, so here's your warm up picture. Um, The question I'm asking you here is basically to analyze this and tell me what in the world is going on here. Okay, so if you can see off to the side a little bit, that kind of squarish, roundish building, that's the Coliseum. Where they had the gladiator fights and things like that. That's it right there. So look at this picture and tell me what in the world is happening. Okay, justify it, you use, explain it in detail, from what you see. Okay, so uh, pause the video, go ahead and write your response because we're moving on in 3, 2, 1. All right, so Diocletian and Constantine basically enlarged two industries. These are typically industries that a lot of people like, but the thing is, they cost a lot of money, and that's the military and civil services. Okay, so civil services would be stuff like cops, environment, and welfare and things like that. Okay, now this costs Rome a ton of money to maintain and to keep it that way. Okay, but the problem is too, the population of Rome wasn't growing anymore. Before it was just booming and there was a lot of people and things like that. Now the population is actually being stagnant. It's like staying the same, and sometimes it even went down. So no people, no tax money coming in. So what they did was basically said, okay, look at, before our money becomes worthless, we got to find a way to get taxes from people. Okay, and one of the issues that people they were like finding was, people try to find these different jobs and try to find, the best paying job and things like that. And there's only so many doctors and teachers we can have. So what can we do to make sure people have jobs and they're able to pay their taxes? And then it dawned on them. What if we have people continue the jobs their parents had? There you go. And so jobs became hereditary. And so whatever job your mom and dad have, or your legal guardian, whomever, you would basically have their job. So if their job is to weld, fabricate welding, things like that, being a mechanic, that would be your job. Or if you had a mom who did some other job, say she's a chef or whatever, you basically had a choice. But still, either way, the job was passed down through the family. Okay. Now, this did help, but it's like putting a band-aid on a broken arm. It's not gonna work. Okay, it might be a temporary fix, but it's not a long-term thing. And by the time the last emperor comes up, this hereditary thing is no longer working, and they have to find a new way to make money. Now, one of the biggest things that uh, all the emperors knew, you had to keep the people entertained. Because if people were, I hate to use the word, but they were bored, they're going to be realizing, man, we're living like crap. My job is crap. This whole his situation, we're living really horrible while the top people live well, the emperor's living well, while we're not. So, in order to get people to stop thinking that kind of thing, a lot of these emperors said, you know what, let's give free entertainment to the people. So, one of the things they had was the Circus Maximus, which is where the horses and chariot races were. Those stadiums could fit 100,000 people in there. Now, just to give you some um, food for thought, most football stadiums nowadays, they fit 75. 80, 90,000 people. There's only a handful of stadiums that can actually fit 100,000 or more. You know, a lot of them 75, 80, 90, but not many have 100,000. Okay. The other thing they had was plays, dramatic plays, comedies, tragedies. So imagine this. Like, it'd be like right now, um, you can go to the theater, any theater, and watch a movie for free. You know, so if you wanted to go see, you know what, there's that movie Smile, Halloween, there's this other Marvel movie coming up, there's this other movie I want to see, you could go and watch it. Okay. The other one but the last one is the one a lot of people went to go see, and that was at the Roman Coliseum. So that's the picture up you see on top. That's the Coliseum. People would sit in their seats and watch gladiators fight to the death and things like that. Um, they would have retellings of historical events. You know, when this great general fought this other barbarian general, and the Romans beat the German, you know, barbarians, pushed them back, and things like that. Okay, here's another one that's really really interesting. If you look at the bottom picture, that is accurate. The top picture is how it looks like, and if you look, see that on top there, there's that little sand. It's like cut off that section on the ground up above, um, that is the ground where gladiators fought. Underneath that green grass on the bottom, that is where they used to have the helmets and weapons, and they would keep the animals there, things like that. It was all underground, maybe about 20 feet underground, 20, 30 feet. But this is where the kicker comes in. They actually used to flood this top area, and they would have battles with boats. They had the boats floating around, recreating famous battles out in the ocean in the Colosseum without flooding the bottom section where all the gladiators and the animals and all the equipment were. These guys were amazing engineers, and that they were able to stop water from falling down at the very bottom of that place. Pretty impressive. Pretty impressive. Now, after the death of Marcus Aurelius, basically Rome started to go down uh, to a real decline. So there was a civil war that happened in Rome. A civil war is when people in a country fight amongst themselves. The economy started to decline really, and this is like the beginning of the end of really Rome. Right? It would take some time, but eventually it got to the breaking point. Now, Diocletian believed Rome was too big. He's like, you know what? That's the problem. This territory up north, by the time we get word that they're being attacked by some German barbarian tribe, by the time we hear the news, those barbarians already took over that area. You know, and when we send troops, they've already attacked another place. You know, so we need a better way. So, boom, it hits them. I'm going to divide Rome into four parts. Each part will have their own ruler. So if something happens up north again, that ruler will, the word can get to them quicker, they'll be able to react quicker and stop the German barbarians from attacking again. The only people these rulers would have to talk to is me. Perfect. So he made a northern part, a western part, uh, like a northern eastern part, and an eastern part. Okay. And at first, it seemed like, hey, this is a great idea. But as you're going to find out, no, this was not a great idea. Now, the other thing was Constantine wanted to make a new Capitol building out in the east, in the Byzantine uh, area. And he wanted this place to be the hub, the trading hub of the world. Everyone from around, from England and France area, all the way to China, they could come in from India too, could come and trade, and and then Rome would be powerful again and things like that. This town became known as Constantinople. Nowadays, it's known as Istanbul, but that was the place he wanted to make the trading hub of the world. Now, as time went on, Rome really, really started to get pretty bad. The Roman emperors just were like, "Oh, don't worry about this. Oh, don't worry about that. Everything will be okay. All right. Jeez, we're not scared of some German tribes and things like that." And the German tribes were to be feared. The western part of the Europe, or sorry, part of Rome, was attacked by German tribes, but they felt real pressure from the Huns. The Huns were putting pressure not only on the eastern part of Rome, but also the German tribes. The Visigoths, these guys were feeling the pressure from the Huns because the Huns were no joke. And they basically forced the Visigoths to invade more into Rome. And they're telling them, hey, we don't want to come in your area. It's just these Huns, they're pushing us. So Rome and the Visigoths decided to temporarily become allies. So think of somebody you don't like, right? I'm not saying hate, you just don't like them too much. But then there's somebody both you guys hate. You and the person you don't like, you both hate somebody worse than you won't like each other. So naturally, they have the same enemy, so they teamed up and they defeated the Huns. But right when they defeated the Huns and pushed the Huns back, um, they revolted against each other, and it just so happened that the Visigoths, revolted first and attacked Rome. Okay. By 410, Rome was taken over by the Visigoths, and another group called the Vandals took over Spain and Africa. These territories were owned by Rome, but now they had it. And by 476, the Western Emperor of Rome, Romulus Augustus, was quite literally kicked out of his kingdom by the head of the German army. He basically dragged them out and kicked them right out of his kingdom. Yeah. So while the western part of Rome was crumbling and being taken over little by little by little by little by the Germanic tribes, the eastern part of Rome, the Byzantine Empire, they would basically thrive and grow. And they would finally collapse. If I'm not mistaken, they wouldn't collapse until the 17th or 18th century. Then they finally collapsed. But yeah, they lasted for quite a while. So some of those people consider themselves Romans, even though Rome was technically now gone, destroyed, and taken piece by piece by piece by the German tribes and the barbarians. All right, so here's your question. Rome had lasted for about 1,000 years. Would you consider them a successful empire or not? So go back to when they first started and all their successes, and basically from this lesson of how they crumbled down. Would you call them a successful empire? And then tell me why you would say yes or no. Okay? Don't say, yeah, maybe, yes and no. No, one or the other. Do not and say both. Okay? It's either one or the other and explain why. Okay? So, with that being said, you guys take care, be safe, and I'll see you guys later, okay?